Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Beyond the Unknown. I'm your host, Jolie,
And I'm Quinn.
and today we're diving deep into the perplexing case of Gordon Edwin Sanderson, famously known as Septic Tank Sam. How did Gordy meet his tragic fate, and why was he given this name? Brace yourselves as we navigate through the horrific and mysterious events surrounding a murder victim who went unidentified for 43 years.
On April 13th, 1977, Charlie McLeod was working on cleaning up an abandoned farmyard that he owned with his wife, Mavis. The farm was located approximately 35 miles east of Edmonton in a small town called Tofield. Tofield is a small community that has a population of approximately 2,500. It is within a larger landmass known as Beaver County. It sits just off one of the major highways that runs east to west in Alberta called Highway 14. Although there are locals who have grown and have remained for generations due to the location off the highway, reasonable distance to the big city of Edmonton, and the cheaper cost of living, the town does also have a somewhat transient population. As with pretty much every small town in Alberta, it is largely supported and surrounded by the agriculture industry and large commercial farming. There is also smaller scale hobby farming around the area. Farming in the area consists of primarily cattle sold for the beef industry, cow-calf programs, meaning the breeding of cows to create the cattle that's eventually sold for beef, grain, such as wheat and canola, as well as the occasional bison and elk farms. And then you also have those tiny little hobby farms that have horses, pigs, chickens, what have you. I mean, those can be commercialized as well, but I don't know if there's any around here. Although arid and mostly flat plains, Tofield is actually quite quaint and charming. The main road is full of very cute shops, restaurants, and other local businesses. They pretty much have everything you need from basic essentials of groceries, gas and primary medical care, to optometry, dentistry, law service, registries, mechanic and part shops. Some of the best eats are found in Tofield, and my personal favorites are Tilly's and the Moonshine. I think I've taken you to the Moonshine before, Joe.
Yeah, I've had a really, really good latte there.
Yep. Anyways, I digress. Back to Sam and his farmyard cleanup. Nope, Sam is the other guy. Fix that. Anyways, I digress. Back to Charlie and his farmyard cleanup. Charlie was a pretty frugal guy, as many of the farmers or those with an ag background tend to be. You know, like my husband and his father always stashing away every little piece of wood or metal, since it could be useful in, I don't know, 15 to 300 years.
You don't know. You don't know when you're going to need it.
You don't. There's that thing circulating on TikTok right now where it's a dad and a son, and the dad has this 2x4 with this weird piece, and he's like, finally!
I love that. It's so good.
It's perfect. So Charlie started to clean the abandoned farmyard and salvaged anything he possibly could, which was everything. He set his sights on a 6-foot deep septic tank in the yard, and he was trying to locate the pump, as this would have been pretty valuable to salvage. In doing so, he noticed something unusual inside the tank, a brown shoe sticking out from a yellow bedsheet. At first, he thought it was just some old trash someone disposed of inside the tank for one reason or another. Upon closer inspection, he noticed some nylon rope around the bedsheet.
Ooh.
That's when he realized it wasn't just some old trash. There was a foot inside of the shoe, which, connected to an entire body found inside this sheet wrapped with rope.
Oh my God.
Panicked, he went to go tell his wife Mavis what he had found, and together they made their way to the RCMP detachment in Tofield. For those who don't know, the RCMP is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They're not actually on horseback anymore, but the RCMP is the primary policing, the RCMP is the primary policing division that is found in all rural and small communities across Canada. Within
And
the
they're
larger,
on they're on horses sometimes though.
okay, I
For
suppose
like
they're on
events.
horses. Yeah, like if you're going to a parade or some kind of fair, but they're not actually catching criminals on horses, to my knowledge. I mean, maybe if someone's aware, please tell us.
Yeah.
Within the larger metropolitan areas, though, such as like neighboring Edmonton, that would be the city police of that area, not the RCMP. Not that that matters at all for the story, just an FYI. So once they got to the RCMP detachment, they met with Once they got to the RCMP detachment, they met with Sergeant Ed Lammerts. Lammerts and another officer followed Charlie and his wife back to the farm. I keep calling Charlie Sam.
No, but you said Charlie this time.
Yeah, but
But you wrote
panicked
it
Sam
Sam.
went to tell his wife Mavis.
Oh,
Sorry,
it's okay.
I'm just gonna, whatever.
Rewind.
Can I?
You can say the whole paragraph over again. It's just cutting.
I liked our dialogue though, so I'll just read it.
Okay.
Panicked, Charlie went to tell his wife Mavis what he had found. Together, they made their way to the RCMP detachment in Tofield. Is that okay? And then I could just get stuck in there?
Yep.
Okay. So, Lamberts and the other officer peered into the tank and also quickly realized that they were dealing with human remains.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the tank was full of sludge and tons of other debris. So
Sludges and like poop.
I would assume, because like it is a septic tank,
Septic tank. Yeah.
but they don't ever say that. They just say like debris. And apparently they actually used ice cream pails, like those big vats that you have at like
Yeah.
an ice cream parlor. They took those and scooped all the junk out to recover the body. And
Why? No one had a shovel?
well, that's what I mean. Like, and I don't think they put on any special clothing or anything. So yeah, dedicated
Okay.
to their
Yeah.
job and not worried to get down and dirty.
Okay.
So they recovered the body, and when it was finally recovered, the nylon rope was removed and the body was slowly unraveled from the bed sheets. The body was clothed in jeans, a blue Levi's shirt, gray work socks, and imitation wallaby shoes. I have
Great. So it's like
no
anybody in
idea.
Tofield?
Yes, literally, but what's an imitation wallaby shoe?
I
Like,
don't
is
know.
wallaby like the animal or is that a brand? I actually couldn't find that
Mm,
information.
maybe it's a brand from the 70s.
Oh, maybe someone tell us.
You said this is in
Okay.
the 70s, right? Or no?
Yep. Yep. Late
Okay.
70s. So, examination of this body was challenging for a couple of reasons. One, the body had already been significantly decomposed because it was covered in something called limestone.
Oh.
Apparently, limestone is thought to hasten the decomposition process, and it was likely used intentionally. However, since the tank was partially filled with water, the plan actually somewhat backfired. So when limestone combines with water, it only leads to a very superficial skin burn, and it actually preserved the rest of the body very well.
Oh.
So dum-dums. It was well it was well suspected that the body had been in the tank anywhere from 4 months to up to 1 year.
So that's
Secondly,
kind of recent. I was expecting it to be like older.
no, like they found the body and it really, in the grand scheme of things, hadn't been there that long.
Hmm.
Secondly, upon closer examination, investor Secondly, upon closer examination, investigators uncovered a truly horrific scene. It was clear that whoever this was had suffered immensely prior to their death. The body was so badly mutilated, especially in the region of the genitals,
Oh.
investigators couldn't actually tell if this was a biological male or female.
Whoa.
Yeah, and the limestone burns probably didn't help, but like there was nothing there to see, if that makes any sense.
That sounds like a very passionate, like violent murder. Like you
Yes,
know this person or
yeah,
something, or you hate them. Wow.
very personal, absolutely. So even though they figured that this 5 foot 10 inch body was that of a Caucasian male, they couldn't actually say for sure. But one thing they could tell is he had been tied up, severely beaten, and was repeatedly burned with a butane torch and lit
Whoa.
cigarettes. Yeah. And they said he's most likely alive when it happened. And it was like a lot of burns, like it was through his socks, like on the soles of his feet. Like
Oh.
it was awful. So the cause of the death was actually not secondary to the beating and all of that. It was due to two gunshot wounds, one in the head and one in the chest, and they couldn't quite tell what that was from, whether that was a 32 caliber or a semi-automatic weapon. The body was then tossed headfirst into the septic tank. The crime was so horrific, as you said, Joe, it seemed personal, and they assumed that the perpetrators probably knew the victim. Lamberts described this crime as cruel and vindictive. It also appeared that the torture and murder occurred in another location before being disposed of in the septic tank, since there really wasn't any evidence found on site that anything really happened there. Not only did the RCMP need to find those responsible, they had to identify this victim. They interviewed countless people and chased down thousands of leads to no avail. Septic Tank Sam had a significant amount of dental work. I don't think I introduced the fact that he was given the name Septic Tank Sam, so I'm just going to reread that. The body was that of a person who had a significant amount of dental work, and they even sent dental x-rays to over 800 dental offices in the area, but this
Wow.
did not help identify the body. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. Like,
Yeah,
what's an area? Like Western Canada or like
it had
Alberta
to, no, but it had to be more than Alberta because, yes, there's a
in
lot
the
of
70s?
dentists.
Yeah.
Exactly. I wouldn't think there'd be over 800 dental offices in just Edmonton back in that time,
Yeah.
but I could be wrong.
If
But
someone lived
oh,
in Edmonton in the 70s, please let us know. I'm
yeah,
kidding.
could you please? I'd like to know the exact number of dental offices, where they were located, who they
Yeah.
saw.
A map with a circle.
Yeah. So, yeah, this was the late 70s. And if you remember, DNA evidence DNA evidence was yet to be used. If you've seen our episode called The Monster of the Miramichi, DNA wasn't used in Canada in forensics and criminal cases until 1988. So eventually, and not surprisingly, this case went cold. There was no way to identify this unknown man of unknown origins, and definitely no further way to then try to find who put him there. So that's when he was given the infamous name of Septic Tank Sam. He was buried in an unmarked gravesite in Edmonton. Septic Tank Sam became almost infamous in Canada, and despite this widespread publicity and public awareness, he still remained unidentified, some saying that the crime was unsolvable. In further attempts to try to solve the case, he was unearthed from his grave on 2 occasions. In 1979, his remains were flown to Oklahoma.
Whoa.
There, yeah, it's a long trip to take for a
Corpse.
decomposed corpse. There, Betty Pat Gatlett, who had 12 years' experience, created his 3D facial composite using measurements of the skull and bones. Check out our social media to see that composite because it's a picture you might recognize. It was circulated for a lot of years. She was
Hmm.
also able to determine that he was right-handed and that and that the victim was between the ages of 26 and 32. She actually determined that he was not Caucasian as originally thought, and he was actually an indigenous man. Septic Tank Sam was reburied, but then he was exhumed again in 2000 by Cyril Chan. He worked for the Edmonton Medical Examiner's Office. At this time, another attempt to match his DNA was undertaken, and again without success. All of the locals knew about the infamous Septic Tank Sam, and for years, rumors and theories abound, always speculating about the true identity of both the victim and the perpetrators of this heinous crime. Based on his clothing, it was thought that he was perhaps a construction worker or maybe a transient or migrant worker. It is believed that he was killed by someone or a group of people that he knew. Tofield locals thought that maybe it was related to a sex crime or infidelity due to the degree of genital mutilation. But RCMP believed he was killed by individuals involved in criminal activity in the Edmonton area. How they thought that, I have no idea.
Maybe like
But
similar kind of vibes that they found in other bodies, but like the
oh,
genitals one, it's like maybe an angry wife, but like the other torturing, the
yeah,
burns and stuff, that just doesn't sound like a crossed lover.
I could see a sex crime though, like if you like did something to
Oh
someone.
yeah.
Like I could see
Yeah,
that.
that makes
Like 'cause
sense.
it's anger, like they wanted him to suffer as sad as that
Yeah.
is. Mhm. Officials also believe that the perpetrators of the crime had to have been locals to the Tofield area or in some way or another at least familiar with the area, Because how the heck would they have known that that farm site was abandoned and that
Mm-hmm.
that septic tank was even there?
Yeah.
So, like, there's a lot of farmland here. There's a lot of abandoned stuff, but to know of an exact spot that that would be a place to dispose of a body, they probably thought they'd committed the perfect crime and that the body would never be recovered, let alone 4 months to 12 months later. Finally, after 43 years, in 2021, the identity of Septic Tank Sam was revealed.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah, it's one of those things where you're like almost surprised they're still looking.
Yeah. I wonder what happened.
Yeah,
Well, you're gonna
and
tell me.
I am gonna tell you. Although many didn't know him, the locals were overjoyed to finally be able to give this man his identity after so many years of being known for the awful grisly crime that occurred in their backyard. With renewed enthusiasm from a cold case that was solved in 2018 in California using new DNA technology, the RCMP launched a new program to help identify unidentified remains. But still, nothing was uncovered. Authorities sought help from experts in Woodland, Texas. The task was very challenging due to the degree of decomposition. Apparently, the specimen was significantly contaminated with bacteria, and finding human DNA was extremely challenging. Once a DNA profile was established, experts were able to create a family tree. Some of these individuals provided their own DNA, and a match was found. The
Wow.
unidentified man was finally matched to a long-time missing persons, Gordon Edwin Sanderson. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
That's so many years later, but it's
Hey.
exciting.
Oh, never mind. I was gonna say the person that found him was named Charlie. I'm gonna cut this bit. Because I was like, didn't I say Gordy earlier? Like, that's crazy.
No, because I confuse the names all over the place. Apparently, oh, sorry. Born October 22nd, 1950, Gordy was originally from Manitoba, Canada. Apparently, Gordy did not have an easy life. Sanderson was taken into foster care at the age of 9 and in the 1960s. At this time, there was widespread removal of Indigenous children from their families and home communities without consent. In British Columbia, for example, on our west coast, it was common practice in the mid-60s to, quote, scoop from their mothers on reserves almost all newly born children.
Oh
This
yeah,
led
this
to
was like actually called the 60 scoop.
yes, and it's awful. And I only learned about that a couple of years ago when I was doing our like Indigenous health programming for school. I was horrified.
Yeah, I only learned that after moving to BC, like again, like 2 or 3 years ago, and it's like, we
Yeah,
barely talked about this in school.
I
Like
know.
maybe mention of residential schools, like
Barely.
briefly, and everything else you've had to learn later in life. It's ridiculous.
British Columbia is actually where a lot of this information comes from on Indigenous history and all of the things that have happened. So British Columbia of all the Canadian provinces, I would say, has done like the best job so
Yeah.
far of attempts at reconciliation. So obviously this led to significant destruction of communities and loss of culture for Indigenous peoples. The majority of the children in the child care welfare system at that time were Indigenous children. They were forcibly removed from their homes, and many were sent to residential schools. These schools, oh shoot, I missed something here. Whether or not in the foster care system, many Indigenous children were also forcibly removed from their homes and sent to residential schools. These schools were horrific places that intended to, quote, kill the Indian and teach children Eurocentered things such as English and Catholicism. Here, children endured horrific physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, and many didn't survive. This recently has made widespread headlines here in Canada due to the uncovering of mass graves of children near former residential school sites. So, real guess, Joe, can you guess when the last residential school closed in Canada?
I would like to say like the 60s, but I know it was way more recent than that.
Guess.
Uh, 85?
1996, when your birth year.
Wow.
Isn't that
27 years ago? Oh my God.
that's really not long ago in the grand scheme.
Yeah,
So,
for me to be born and they're just shutting those doors, that's crazy.
yeah, like during my lifetime, people were subjected to that.
Yeah.
Crazy. So it's not clear to me exactly whether Sanderson attended a residential school. I can only assume that he did, just based on what happened to him. Many who did have since suffered from significant mental health concerns and addictions. Sanderson himself was known to have many run ins with the law, and he too battled with addiction. In the 1970s, Gordy was living in Edmonton, Alberta. His family last heard from him when he said he was going to meet up with their brother Arthur Sanderson in Calgary. This is 3 hours south of Edmonton, but he never made it. His sister Joyce reported him missing in the 80s. Based on the assumption that he was in the tank around 1 year prior to discovery, Gordy was just 26 years old at the time of his death.
Oh my God. So I wonder because he was heading from Edmonton south to Calgary, made it actually what, like west? Where is Tofield? So west,
Tofield's
east?
west of Edmonton, so he wasn't
Yeah.
even sniffing in the right direction. He was getting further from Calgary.
Yeah, so I wonder if he was like hitchhiking.
Oh, because yeah, if you hitchhiked, if he was like in more north part of Edmonton,
Hmm.
um, and he was hitchhiking and they just kind of cut west to Highway 14, very possible.
Yeah.
Very possible. But do you really think this is a hitchhiking crime? It's like we said before, it's so personal.
Yeah, I don't know. But that's the only thing I can think of. Why would you end up over there if you're on a journey more south? Maybe you don't have a
Yeah,
car. How do you get there?
that's true. He probably didn't because they would have, well, no, they wouldn't have found records of that because they didn't know who he was at the time.
Hmm.
Yeah, but to this day, I wish I had some big surprise ending that they also found the murderer. But to this day, it's an open case. As time goes by, there will be fewer witnesses and lesser chance of bringing peace to his family. While the RCMP believes it is possible that those responsible have since died, they're still asking for any tips. They're still asking for any tips to be sent forward to the Tofield RCMP detachment. We will leave their information on our social in case any of you might have any clues into what happened to Gordon Edwin Sanderson, known for 43 years as Septic Tank Sam.
Wow. I really hope someone has a tip. That's a
Me
long
too.
time.
Me too. But hey, a lot of listeners here in Western Alberta, we might get something.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Thank you for joining us. Nope, start over. What am I doing? Thanks. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Unknown. If you have a story you'd like to share, please email us at moody.mediaprod@gmail.com. You can reach out on our website, and who knows, your story might be featured in our next episode.
All of our sources for this episode can be found on our website, beyondtheunknownpod.com. Also, don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and please leave us a review.
Please, we're begging you. No, I'm kidding.
Please.
Until next time, listeners, stay curious and remember that the unknown is always just beyond the shadows.
Bye.
Bye.